already heard, I will. My goal for this, and I invited initially Shamal to speak today, but then I realized this morning that it was outside of my integrity. Um, that I really wanted this day to be about an introduction to jhana rather than jhana as a just a practice. I wanted to create a proper framework for it. And I thought maybe we could do another day long where we just focus on the technique of the first jhana. I will talk about the technique of getting into the first jhana that I can invite you to practice today. There are other techniques, there are many ways of doing this. And as I said earlier, it's easy to fall into bookishness, to read about jhana and to imagine it. And the best insight it can give you there is that if we all just jumped into a bus, or if we jumped into a car and drove to Philly, you don't imagine Philly, Philly, Philly in your head. You have to take a right turn here and a left turn there. If you just have an image of your destination in your head while you're driving, you'll probably get into an accident and hit something. No, seriously, you will encounter problems. And I hope you understand what I mean, but a lot of people practice jhana with just an image of whether you do have to have some idea. And so I think it's really important to set up, and that's what I wanted to do with you all today. And maybe if Shamal still likes us at the end of the day, we can invite him back for for a day where we're more focused on the technique and the process and less on um, less on the premises and the goals of the jhana practice and how it's situated. Um, for me, everything starts with opening up to our human condition, to what it is for us. You could say the first noble truth, the Buddha described it as dukkha. Um, Dukkha is essentially uh, arises from a feeling of lack. It's so fundamental to who we are. We're almost it's one of the biggest invisibles is the structure of desire. It's based on an idea that I don't have, that I need acquisitions to be happy, to be full. As I said, the best descriptor I could give for one of the benefits of jhana practice, one of the side effects of especially the early jhanas, is a feeling of fullness, a feeling of piti, a feeling of, it comes from the past tense of the verb to drink. So it's a sense of having drunk in, you're no longer thirsty at that point. And the body mind will respond with a sense of energy, and how your body interprets that sense of fullness at its base. When it's new, it might be a rising sensation in the body. It might be a sense of thrill. It might be just a generalized vibratory feeling of aliveness that's very subtle at first. And you just drop down and get really quiet at that layer and try not to just be still with it. And it will sort of open up at that point. It may change and evolve and get more full. And there's things that you can do not to get in the way, and there's things you can do to let it grow that we can talk about. Um, so this fullness, it turns out, is a critical part of emptying out, because the jhanas really are a natural process of emptying out, our process of identification, because they are less and less fabricated states. We're making things up, as I introduced at the beginning, where our identity is really made up of fragments of an image of me in the mirror, a thought of my name, or a memory of my story in this past that may or may not be an accurate story, as we all know how memory works, a projection of what all that means in the future, my set of disappointments vis-a-vis that. So um, the human condition, for me, is based on this fundamental feeling of lack and this need to fulfill some. One of the monks had incense burning here this morning, and sometimes gets to my throat. Um, and so desire here, in the sense of tanham, really meaning thirst, is this sense of lack and the sense that I need to fill something up. And jhana is a kind of uh, body mind experience, or sensory experience in which we can open up that these thoughts of having these feelings of lack actually have their sensory equivalent in the body. You can actually feel in the body like an emptiness in the heart, that you need something in the world to fulfill that. And most of us live, many lifetimes within one lifetime. You can see it in your own, if you search through your memories, you can see different identities that you've built up as a fun person, as a not fun person, as a serious person, as a person in this relationship, as a person in that relationship. And we just jump from one thing to the other, and constantly seeking gratification on the outside and not finding it. And here's the chance to take the U-turn and turn back and fill up on the inside and see how that shifts and changes. When we become full on the inside, we become more capable of giving, more capable also of letting go. And we also develop an incredible amount of confidence in the practice and in who we are and in our capacity to wake up and to let go even more, because it can be, and usually is for 99% of the people, a very gradual process, a natural unbinding process of the underpinnings of identity and the I making and me making process. Um, and so uh, I did want to stress maybe the importance of what happens, how we train our attention, how we feed our mind. How are you showing up in the world? What are your, can we really sense into our core sense of lack, however it's defined? It could be a story that's attached to it of shame, of not being loved, of and seeking fulfillment externally. But how are we desiring? How are we connecting with the world through that sense of lack and needing to be filled up? And that's work that we're bringing really a direct knowing into that connection, because we are connected through our tanha to the world, through our that structure that gets set up. Um, and can we open up to a different way of relating to the world, without that tanha, without that type of desire? Um, and can we live a purely desireless life from fullness? You can still have general desires and be in relationships and live a lay life. Um, but we renounce from that lack. When we renounce from that lack, we gain a certain fullness, and our lives change, and we can bring in more positive qualities, and the world for us changes. Nivi was just talking about the mind is reality and reality is mind. We can really see that the positive mind states of non-greed, non-anger, and non-delusion really feed and change our reality, and bringing awareness, creativity, experimentation, playfulness, and how we can do that is a very important part of this practice. Um, and so one thing that I mentioned in my 5 hindrances day-long retreat that came up, was that that the mind is luminous at its base, and it's just covered over by incoming defilements, as the Buddha says. And so we're really looking towards that pure mind, and the hindrances or things, that negativity, biases, however they show up, um, can um, be simplified energetically to desire, sort of that reaching externally towards the world. Um, and kind of pulling away from the world. And that's the fundamental structure of identity, is the self believes that it is a separate identity from the world, and that it can create a back there from the world and control the world out there. And so it creates an artificial oppositional structure that can appear like strife and separation and all sorts of problems in the world. And metta and the jhana practice heal that and bring us into samadhi in general, bring us into this back into intimacy with life. And that's where, when our faculties are balanced, that we're able to see through the fabrication of mind making of existence and illusion and delusion and ignorance, as we call it in Buddhism, avijja, fall away at that point, and we can penetrate into the nature of reality and awakening itself. Uh, so we can simplify the hindrances, we can complexify them, as I meant stressed on the retreat, to see more refinement, to see that they're all just categories, but important ones for bringing awareness to them. They're also, there's a survival mechanism inherent in each one of them, and so desire can protect us, but there's also a need to see the dangers in it and to figure out an escape. And so this is just a sort of basic structure, but energetically you can just feel the push and pull. Do you feel that in life, just being pushed and pulled, like in a way coming back and forth? And that what we're really all looking for is refuge, this sense of security, this sense of protection from being pushed and pulled by our desires and our fears, and to find a sense of stability there. um, there are many types of jhana practices that the teachers, including the Buddha. I brought a few books that have accompanied me on my path. There are more, but for those of you who do like to explore and read, I would say it's good to know that they're out there, that everyone has a slightly different flavor. Some people gain more from reading, for others, it can get in the way. As I said, it can give you a bookish quality. You're imagining you're in Philly and you're getting in accidents along the way. But it can be encouraging as well. It's best to connect with someone who's had a long-term jhana practice. I first discovered jhana 20 years ago, and I've been practicing it since then. And it also arose naturally for me during an unbinding process, an awakening process. As I said, that's what I've always emphasized, that it's a natural process. It doesn't need to be formalized and mastered and bragged about and compared to. It's your jhana practice is your jhana practice, and it's just uncovering. As the Buddha described what he uncovered was like a city in the jungle. He just compared awakening to ruins in the jungle. He just uncovered the roots and the trees away from it and cleared it up and pointed us that it exists. But we have to find our own, our own, do our own archaeological dig. And the way what you dig first and what you dig first and what you dig first will be different, because it will be based on what shows up that day. And it's a development of skills, a set of skills around it, basically. um as I said, and I've been stressing, samadhi is really, it's the one thing I agree with Buddha Gosa's discussion, in particular, is that samadhi is really unification, a settling of the mind. We unfortunately translate it as concentration, so it gives you an idea that it's just mind bearing down on mind, which is kind of a contraction, but it's actually, it couldn't be a worse translation. Um, we first have to open up to the vastness. We have to keep opening up, because the suffering will want to contract around anything that's arising. And that's when we have that desire structure that will build up from that aversion. And so There'll be lack and wanting and disappointment. You'll never get exactly what you dreamed of. It'll be in a different form. Um, there'll be frustrations. You'll go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And when does it end? So, this, as I said before, is just kind of like finding that fulcrum point, that balance. If you put a board and try and find that right center, if you put a board on like a pyramid, finding there's always a fulcrum point, and it's different for every board, right? Depending on where the weight is. And it's just finding that sense of delicacy and refinement in our meditation. Um, so I would say Jhana is a continuum of well-being, and finding well-being, finding this unification of mind in well-being. And I would say that, citing the Buddha in Majjhima Nikaya 139, that he described jhana as this kind of pleasure, or this jhanic pleasure should be pursued. It should be developed. It should be cultivated. It should not be feared. The Buddha rarely said should. When he said should, we listen. So, and Anguttara number 624, the Buddha states, or the Buddha, the sutta has the Buddha say, a practitioner skilled in samadhi could shatter the Himalayas, the king of mountains, to say nothing of delusion, of avijja, which is the start of suffering, that sense of not even that, the invisibles, as I talked about earlier, not even seeing the fundamental lack and craving that comes immediately out into experience, into our life. And in Samyutta Nikaya, number 53-7, the sutta has the Buddha say, just as the river Ganges flows towards the ocean, slopes towards the ocean, so too a practitioner who cultivates and develops states of samadhi. He goes through the jhanas, flows, slopes, and inclines towards nibbana, the third noble truth, full release. So you see, it's once you initiate the movement into jhana, it's a movement that will happen on its own. It will deepen on its own. It will become effortless, but there's an initiating effort that needs to go into it. And that will pay huge dividends back to you in your practice. It is kind of shaking up the rub and cleaning everything up inside. There is a purification process that will happen. And there will be, as I mentioned earlier in my earlier introduction today, there are some trigger warnings that I should mention there, because once the mind does quiet down, we realize that we're busy because we're living in a state of suppression, because we don't want to really confront some of the things that might upset us. And so when we release that chatter in the mind, when we can really find a way to really step aside from it temporarily in jhana practice, it will come back, of course, but things will come up. But with that skill of getting into that state also comes the ability to heal from it. And so it is a way to heal from our traumas of separation, our addictions and things. Everyone has an orientation towards either more desire or more anger or more delusion. So everyone's a little bit different there, but things will come up, but you will have the tools to deal with them. It's part and parcel of the practice. And just doing that is an awakening process itself. It will remove some of those underlying seeds of tightness and clinging that we hold on to, and we are creating a contraction around. We're exerting a lot of energy to keep them there. And part of the energy that's released is a reuse of that energy we were using to hold ourselves in a contraction. And there's a certain gladness that comes upon the mind when we're released to that. And that gladness is part and parcel of the definition of the first jhana. We say, I hate the word secluded. It's another word for that. Distanced or secluded or away from, held in suppression. What's really it's just that the secluded from sensuality, quite secluded from unwholesome thoughts, meaning the hindrances, these incoming defilements, these clouds. The meditator enters and remains in the first jhana. And so the really triggering, the really sort of, not, I don't want to use the word triggering in that sense, the initiating entry into jhana is a certain, it can be accidental, can be just really opening up to a sense of gladness. You can take an object like gratitude or compassion, muditas. We had a retreat on appreciating others, something that will temporarily suppress some type of deep frustration of separation and strife within us. And it may allow for the hindrances to subside. You might feel like a cloud has opened up the sky and sunlight's coming through, and you might experience a sense of gladness. And it's an appreciation, and what kind of creates a feedback loop. In the jhana is a kind of feedback loop. So the initiating force might be a positivity practice, like one of the Brahma Viharas. We spend a day long on each of them. Or it might be just an accidental, just sort of opening that will just open up. It might feel like that at first. A sense of inspiration, a sense of hope, something will open up and the hindrances will settle down, and you'll notice that they've settled down. Remember, that's why we were taking stock earlier. You'll notice you've dropped beneath them into clarity. And with that, you can feel glad that you're no longer subject to their whims. They're not pushing and pulling you around. You're not naked in a rainstorm in the Caribbean, tied to a tree, and it'll feel freeing. And there's a certain energy that'll be released, and that's a certain initiating positive sort of stage. We're in what we call a stage of kind of non-remorse, where we no more regret, no more hindrances. You're not dwelling on the past anymore. Things aren't coming up. There's a sense of wholesomeness that will arise in you. Um, so for me, I think samadhi has been a way to rejuvenate the mind, to gain a sense of deep rest. I wanted to read you quickly Rob Burbea's, the way he extols jhana. He describes it as deep rest, rejuvenation of the whole being, emotional and physical healing, vitality, openings of intuition, emotional strength that is pliable, an increase in the heart's capacity and availability to others, um, steadiness of energy, of commitment in creative and service work. He goes on and on. It helped me with my schoolwork to be more concentrated. It gave me a magnifying glass to look at Dhammas really carefully, gave me the confidence to teach for the past 18 years here. Um, and it helped me see the failures and the successes, and the successes and the failures. And the best I can do is to show you that it just helped me trust awakening, the process itself, to see, because one of the skills to be in this malleability, in this adaptability, in this flow of life, to be always in the best position, is to trust underneath is the answer, and to just deepen down and let that deeper layer rise to the surface. And so even in times when my heart was filled with just instant, how could this be happening, that we've elected a president who's going to destroy a government, that you can see the antipathy there, you can see the strife, the opposition, you can see it's fabricated by an image. And you instantly, when you're clear in samadhi, you instantly see the compassion for that fabricated thought that you're I'm torturing little Robert here with this thought of something that doesn't quite exist yet. Um, and so I would say that when the clouds come in, there's a depth in the experience of samadhi that support it. And so if I would give a mudra of jhana is awakening and awakening is jhana, the path is nibbana, nibbana is the path, I would say it's empty at the core, and that oppositions meet each other in balance, and there's always support arising. And I would say that that thought to trust, to trust that positivity will come, and in those darkest moments, and wisdom will come, and compassion will come to support you. And it really, seeing that helped me relax into waking, that I wasn't fabricating an awakening experience. I was fabricating as little as I could to see through with my magnifying glass, so I wouldn't be tricked up in it anymore. So I would say that was a huge benefit. And then just seeing the universality of it. Um, let's see. I would say that when we want jhana and when we realize it's a good thing for us, that's where we get tripped up. And there's as I was saying before, there's kind of an inverse relationship to it. The more we desire it, the more we're in a state of lack. We're not turning back and seeing the fullness that is already there. And it's an uncovering process. It's a revealing. It's a harmonization of the energies that are naturally occurring. Um, and I know the word energy, and there's some technical terms that I use. I've been speaking this language for a long time. We're going to have an hour-long Q&A with Shamal at the end of the day, to answer any questions that arise as you go through the practice. I think I have just enough time to kind of go through how my pared down approach about how I do jhana and what has worked. I also want to caveat that I've tried every single method that I can think of, and all of them pretty much work. I've gone through the Sudhimagga, I've gone through the 40 topics. I've done creative ones of my own. Pretty much every moment is a cliff into emptiness and openness and fullness and awakening. And every moment is, there's everything you need right here, to wake up. If we can just develop an all-around view, as the Buddha calls full awakening, is the all-encompassing view. Jhana will give you a perspective that full liberation is possible, that nibbana is already here and now, and that is just these incoming defilements that are getting in the way, and we can trust the process. So my method, is number one thing is getting comfortable, feeling a sense of comfort, not being overly taut, not being overly stressed, not efforting excessively in the sense of contraction in the body. So sometimes really feeling, can you remember a time when you were really, really comfortable, that you really felt um, settled in your posture, in your body, and in your mind? And can you connect? Initially, you can look externally how the body's situated. Or is it balanced? Are you sitting on one foot that's going to go numb in 5 minutes? Having a sense of your comfort needs. And then, are you willing to solve any comfort needs that come up later with just breathing, with just the object of your meditation? Can you breathe in such a way that can calm a sense of tension in the back of the neck? Is there a way you can even move a little, a millimeter up? You can experiment with breathing fully into the back. You can expand your understanding of breath beyond biological breathing. The skin breeze, the Buddha had breathing that goes up. You can feel these energies that rise. Energy, anytime you sense your body, that is breath. That's just how we're using the term. But can you feel these energies or breath sensations rising in the body? Can you feel them sinking? And can you use any directionality to heal? Maybe there's excessive lift in the body. So this is a kind of, calming effect. You might want to balance it with dropping. Can you feel the balance between the lift of an inhale and the descent of the exhale? Can you find the opposite in each? Can you find the lift on the exhale and the descent on the inhale? Can you find the unity between the two? The calming and energizing balance in the inhale and the exhale. So anything that comes up, I'm not comfortable. This sense of lack, I desire, I have to get up and scream. Can you breathe in such a way uh, to balance that out? And it's a patience game in the end. But trust the container of the practice, trusting the container of the practice, trust the object of meditation that it can solve, I'm going to say it, every one of your problems. I've been in 98-degree weather in Thailand, 98% humidity, no sleep, eating broth once a day with epilepsy. And I breathed in a way that got me through all of those difficulties. And you can too. So try it, try it. So that's step one, getting comfortable. And you might already feel comfortable. And if you already feel comfortable, go to that point of comfort in the body and let it spread. Just breathe it in and out and let it spread. And we do that because we don't have a body. Our knowing of the body is merely energetics. It's merely vibration. We relate to that vibrational presence, sense of presence through an image and a thought. We drop the thought, what's left? It's just a vibrational presence with no edges, no center. And so we just go in and trust that. That's the light that we're looking for that will spread. There are only 3 steps. And then there'll be some type of sensation that will arise, that will center you. There's nodal points in this energetic system where things flow better. Um, One of the meanings of one-pointedness, which is kind of a factor that accompanies the jhanas, is a lookout point. And it's also one of the meanings of of ekagata, of having a lookout point. And these, you can, if you know the chakra system, you don't need to believe in them or understand them, but you'll feel them energetically when you open up to this space. And everyone has a different orientation. And I don't want to tell you to put your mind up on your upper lip, even though it's refined and difficult. And so it will increase your energy of attention, which is good, and heal the woundedness of our attention, which has been trained by this lack and need and desire that connects the two, outside, inside, desire, connection. Our attention is trained, it's frantic and restless. And so seeing that the attention will gravitate energetically to the heart, or it'll gravitate energetically to the base. And often it depends. If we're too much on our head, I always advise going low. And if we're too much maybe in our body or in pain, sometimes I advise going high to kind of balance between the two. Generally, sensations start off more refined in the face with that tickle of the breath over the lips and things like that. And any object should have a quality of refinement that will interest you because it'll be changing and soft and relaxing and delicate, and it will open you up. So that's step 2, is just to evenly place your mindfulness on a spot that you find that draws you in, that you feel some magnetic pull to. And if you want to just try one out, try the upper lip, try the heart, just as 2 of the big ones. And of course, we're going to have to be working with thought and everyone will have thoughts going on, and they're normal. Just don't identify with them. Don't claim them as me or mine. Just they don't define you. Have it turn towards them. That's how I deal with earworms. I just open up and say, all right, let me enjoy it, this song. And it's amazing how it just dies out if you turn directly towards something. Things stay in relationship to us when we have aversion towards them or repress them. So no need for aversion towards thoughts. They're not even yours. They're just arising. Um, and just create space. Keep creating space. You might find a subtle fatigue or drowsiness that will set on and your attention will collapse. Keep trying to open up. Just tell yourself to open up, to feel the whole field of awareness. And that akagata point should be in harmony between that lookout point with its environs. We want to be connected with spread our feelers out, as I call it, into the whole field of vibration, this sensory awareness, and you'll feel it feeding the center, and the center feeding the outside. You'll feel a sort of pulse, a sort of connection. And if we stay with that long enough, without interruption, the mind will get completely absorbed into it. And there will be some sense of really refined enjoyment that will arise somewhere in the experience. And put your mind, take it away from the object and into the enjoyment and just become that whole experience and really let go into that sense of enjoyment. And depending on how much energy and mindfulness you have put into that object, just keeping the mind connected to that object um, of interest, you could call it, that lookout point, that connection with the whole space, is it, you'll get, you can have some sense of just relaxing and enjoyment. It might last a few minutes. You might have to come back to your point to build it up again. You can then go enjoy it for a few more minutes. You might just continue staying with that object and just ignore that sense of pleasure for a little bit to let it build. Let it sort of build in the background before you turn your mind to it and take the pleasure as an object. So this is one way of entering into the first jhana that I'll share with you today. And there are many, many others. And we can talk about refining some of the details later in the day. So I hope you all enjoy your practice. Let's see if there are any last words. That was a lot. If you do have a sense of just feeling, breathing in a way that makes the body feel full energetically, um, is very healing, um, and comfortable. And I would just trust that and keep deepening with that and see where it takes you. Just being present with whatever fullness of presence is arising in the moment. And it's that simple. Really, you can boil all those 3 steps down to one. Because then you're really working with this structure of lack and needing an object to fill that lack, this sense of deprivation, or breathing into that fullness. You might find your body will rock or jerk because it's an energetic experience. That's okay. You might feel the body dissolving as an image or a solidity. That's okay. You might feel the body's more uniform feeling, less fragmented. Breathe in a way that shares the little back that feels victimized because it's hurting, and the go into the heart that feels full and loving, and let the two meet each other, and breathe in a way that spreads the whole experience uniformly. We'll have a period of silent meditation practice, and then we'll have a break.